And the topic of our event today is understanding and tracking AML labs. We know a lot of patients have questions in how to actually understand their labs, what should they put more attention, and how HealthTree Cure Hub can help them track their labs. So this is what we will learn today. And just as a reminder, at the end of today's event, I will provide Mary's email address. If you have a topic you would like to see us cover, please reach out so we can get it on our schedule. We love being able to address topics that our community is really interested in. Here's the agenda for today. First, I will introduce our speaker, medical navigator Elise Ahlstrom, and then she will spend the next 30 minutes or so giving us her presentation. After the presentation, Elise and Jimena will be ready for your questions and comments. So now I would like you to introduce you all to Elise Ahlstrom. Elise is a medical navigator at HealthTree. Although she started working with myeloma patients, she now works deeply with AML and MDS patients, and she loves it. She's a full-time nursing student and has a bachelor's in Spanish. She's currently living in Pensacola with her husband, who is a Marine and is in pilot training, and they're both currently expecting their first baby, and we couldn't be much happier for them. She loves family, traveling, camping, and hiking. And as you can see, this is why I'm so excited to have her on to speak to us today. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Elise.
Hi, everyone. As Marilu said, my name is Elise, and I am going to be helping you guys understand AML labs. So with that, let's get started. So here's the agenda. I'm first going to give an overview of AML, what blood and bone marrow cells are like and why they're important in AML, and then AML characteristics, the criteria, and then a little bit about MDS, and then we'll jump into labs and genetics, the tests that doctors will use, and then important labs and trends to look out for. And then after that, I'll talk about Cure Hub and how awesome Cure Hub is, and then how to connect your records to Cure Hub. So let's start with the bone marrow. So the bone marrow is really important in AML. I like to think of the bone marrow as like a birthing center or a nursery for your body's stem or your body's cells. They grow up in the bone marrow and they are very early, they're immature, and then they grow. And then once they're mature enough, they'll leave the bone marrow into the blood and start performing their unique functions within the body. In the bone marrow, there are stem cells. They're blood stem cells called hematopoietic stem cells. It's a fancy name for blood stem cells. And these are going to make a lot of cells, but the main ones are red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. And so when they are mature enough, you'll get these cells, and these three cells are the ones that leave the bone marrow, and they are circulating in the blood. So here is a bigger picture of what that lineage, that family tree looks like. The blood stem cell right here, when it's in the bone marrow, it's maturing and it's differentiating into different types of blood cells. So these ones are still immature, but eventually they become mature blood cells, like you'll see here, the red blood cell. Erythrocyte's just a fancy name for it. Thrombocyte, it's a fancy name for platelet. And then you have here circled in blue, the white blood cells. So there's actually a lot of different types of cells within the white blood cell category. And these are the ones that are mature and they are in the blood. In AML, we want to focus mostly on this little part of the lineage right here, because this is what AML affects. It'll affect the myeloblast and while it's maturing, and it'll make it so that the myeloblast can't mature into these white blood cells. And then there's other subtypes of AML that affect the red blood cells or the early red blood cells, and then the early platelets, so the megakaryocytes. Those are very rare subtypes, so I want to focus mostly on this section right here. So I like to think of it as like a flower field, the bone marrow, like a flower field. So in a normal bone marrow, you have a lot of different cells. They all coexist, just like a flower field. It's got lots of flowers, different populations and amounts of flowers. They all work differently, but they all coexist, and it's really beautiful. But in an AML bone marrow, the weeds are gonna start coming up and they're gonna grow out of control. And yes, you'll see some flowers like in the background here, but for the most part, the healthy flowers, they have no room left to grow, and so they just die off. And so you'll see kind of the bone marrow looks like this, where there's just a lot of dandelion weeds, overgrown, and it's not good for the bone marrow. So this is exactly how it happens. So there will be a mutation in the genes, and it's causes immature myeloid cells. Most of you might be familiar with the word blasts. That's a name for immature cells. And the mutation causes this blast or these blasts to grow out of control. And then they'll start crowding out the bone marrow, and the bone marrow can't make enough healthy blood cells. There's no room for them. And then also at the same time, those blasts more than likely will start to spill out into the bloodstream. And what you get is cytopenia, which is a fancy word for low blood cells. So low red blood cells, low platelets, sometimes low white blood cells, but also at the same time, it's common that you'll get high white blood cell count because those blasts are a category of white blood cells, and those are going to show up on your blood tests. So what this manifests as in your body is it can manifest a lot of ways. And you could have trouble getting over a sickness or get sick really easily, fatigue, chills, fever. You can bruise easily or bleed easily. That's all. And bone pain. Those are symptoms of that low blood cell count. The criteria for AML. So in the normal bloodstream, you normally have 0% blasts. There's not supposed to be blasts in the bloodstream because they're immature. They're not ready to leave the bone marrow. And in the bone marrow, there's some blasts, but there's also not a ton of them. But in AML, it's gonna grow out of control. You're gonna see 20% or more in the bloodstream or 20% or more in the bone marrow. So that's the criteria. That's when your doctor is going to start looking at diagnosing you with AML. With MDS, I don't know if you guys have heard of MDS before, but it's different, but it's also similar in many ways. It's a group of bone marrow disorders in which the bone marrow does not produce enough healthy blood cells. And like MDS or like AML, sorry, most of these disorders are accompanied by an increase in blasts. It's just not going to be as much as AML. And then it will progress to AML in about a third of patients. So there's different reasons why you get MDS, and some of those reasons can be similar to AML. I want to go over the tests that are used to diagnose and assess your AML. So you might be familiar with 3 of these, or at least some of them. I'm going to go over the 3 main ones, and then we'll talk about this 4th one that's used a little less. So the complete blood count, or CBC, it assesses your main blood cell types. Or your counts. So that's red blood cells, platelets, and then the total white blood cell count. And then it also tests some of the red blood cell characteristics. We'll go over that a little bit later. The differential, so that's sometimes combined with the CBC. You'll see CBC and differential on your test results. The differential, we will test your different white blood cell counts. So if you remember the lineage photo slide that I showed earlier, you have a lot of different types of white blood cells. So this test is going to look at the individual cell counts of those white blood cells. And then peripheral blood smear is similar to a manual differential where the doctor is going to look at those white blood cells under the microscope, and they are going to look at the characteristics and kind of see the populations and categorize it that way. Bone marrow aspiration biopsy, most of you are probably familiar with this. They will take a part of your bone marrow and they will test it. They'll use it for genetic testing and then also bone marrow smears where they will also look at it under the microscope. And then something that's rarely done, but I wanted to put it in here just in case any of you see that and then freak out and wonder what it is. A lumbar puncture, or also called a spinal tap, is sometimes used in AML when your doctor suspects that your AML may be spreading into your brain or your spinal cord. So that's where they take a sample of the fluid in your spinal cord and test it for AML. Okay, so I want to take a moment to talk about trends. So it's important when you're tracking your labs that you look at the big picture. A single lab, let's say, is really high or really low. It might be scary, but it's really important to look at the overall trend. What's going on are all the labs that are grouped near the same dates, are they going up? Are they going down? Are they staying the same? And that helps you understand whether or not your AML is changing over time. And then your doctor is going to be looking at that, but it's also, we talk about patients being their best advocate. So if you notice an abnormal trend on your labs, ask your doctor about it. Let them make sure that they know about it and ask them what's going on, why is this happening? So here are some common trends that we see with AML. At diagnosis, more than likely you will have some low blood cell counts, and that might be the reason why it flagged your doctor to do additional testing. You'll see low or high white blood cells. We talked a little bit before about why it could be low or high. You'll see low red blood cells, low platelets, which are down here. And then also part of the CBC, like I talked about, there are red blood cell components that they test for. Two of these are important to at least know. Low hemoglobin and low hematocrit. So hemoglobin is a protein that's in the red blood cell and it carries oxygen. So when you have low red blood cells, you're automatically gonna have low hemoglobin. And then hematocrit is the percentage of red blood cells in your blood. And so yeah, you're gonna have low hematocrit too if you have low red blood cells. I want to go back to the flower field analogy because during your journey with AML, you're gonna see, especially with chemotherapy or after it, you might see that your you're more than likely going to see that your blood cell count is going to be low. And that's not necessarily an indicator that your AML is worsening. What really happens is, just like this flower field, when you put weed killer on the flower field, it's going to kill the weeds, but it's also going to damage the flowers around it. Same with the bone marrow. The chemotherapy is going to destroy those unhealthy cancer cells, but it's going to damage the healthy blood cells around it. So that's going to manifest as low blood cell counts. Here is a CBC with a differential. This is a good example of one that you might see when you look at your test results. So you'll have the CBC here, and then you see that the white blood cell differential is here. And then the white blood cell, you can see there's the differential, you can see there's different types of cells. And these are all white blood cells. Here's a better example of what it looks like under the microscope. You have the pink or red blood cells, and then the little dot right here is a platelet. And then these purple ones are all white blood cells, but they're different types of white blood cells. So with AML, these are all the white blood cells. This is some CBC right here. You will have a high blast count. So they're gonna look at your blast count in your blood. This is a good example of what it looks like over time. So they started testing it around May 21st. It was a 2%. And then June 14th, it's a 4%. So it's going up. And the normal percentage is 0%. Like I said, blasts do not belong in the blood. They belong in the bone marrow and at low percents in the bone marrow. Neutrophils are going to be low. Neutrophils are a type of white blood cell. They're very common. There's a lot of them, and they are responsible for fighting infection. And so those are more than likely going to be low as well. Kind of the same with the bone marrow aspiration and biopsy. They're going to look for the blast count. Here you can see this patient has 50% of blasts in their bone marrow. The normal range is a lot less. And then they have low early neutrophils. So it's like immature form of neutrophils. They live in the bone marrow. This says band. That's another way to call neutrophils. In the next slide, I'll talk about the abbreviations. I'll go right now. There's a lot of different abbreviations for different cells. And it can be really confusing because you'll see a lot of these abbreviations and names on your test results, and it could be really unfamiliar. So you will have access to this presentation later. You can go and look at this graph or look it up on Google to see, like, what does EO mean? Why is that on my test results? And then you can see, oh, it's eosinophils or eosinophils. It's a type of white blood cell. Especially with the neutrophils, they have a lot of different names. It can be really confusing. So blood and bone marrow smears kind of looks like the wildflower field analogy that I talked about. In the normal blood, you're going to see a lot less white blood cells than red blood cells. And the ones that you do see, they're mature, they're normal. So this is a lymphocyte, this is a neutrophil. And then here is the blood smear of an AML patient, and there's a lot more, but these are also immature forms. So these are blasts, they're different kinds, and they shouldn't be in the blood. Same with bone marrow, there's more, and there's blasts in here, but the blast in the bone marrow smear of the AML patient is so much more. And so doctors will look at this and it'll help them know the characteristics of your cancer. And then I want to talk briefly about subtypes. Subtypes, there's a lot of different types of subtypes with AML. That basically, it boils down to the type of genetic mutations that your blast cells have, and then also what point were they in their maturation when things went wrong and things are going wrong. So this helps doctors know, knowing the subtypes helps doctors know the best treatment and the prognosis. It plays a huge role in that, and I just wanted to mention it in case you see words like this. It's a subtype, and it really plays a big role in the treatment and prognosis. Okay, and then I want to talk about the next portion, genetic mutations, and the tests that doctors will use for those to find those mutations. As we kind of talked about, genetic mutations, they'll cause faulty cells. So in AML, that's a faulty blast cell. So you can think of this cell as a blast cell. And the nucleus is where you find that genetic information. It'll have chromosomes, and then in the chromosomes, it'll have a lot of DNA. And then a portion of that DNA will have genes. And those genes can either be mutated or the whole chromosome can be mutated. And it causes that blast cell to not function right. And that's what causes it to grow out of control and become cancer. So bone marrow tests help us know like why the blasts, what went wrong. And I want to put this here. There's a lot of bone marrow tests that you might come across when you're looking at your test results and your doctor notes. You might be familiar with flow cytometry. This is used a lot more than immunohistochemistry stains, but both of them identify the types of CD markers on cells. And if you've heard of CD markers, you might have heard like CD117, CD45, CD34. There's a lot of numbers. They are proteins on the surface of cells, and that helps categorize AML and especially the blasts. And then FISH, NGS, PCR, and cytogenetics. So these all identify mutations in the chromosomes and the genes. So FISH usually handles the chromosome level. NGS is really good with the gene level, looking at those gene mutations. And then PCR does the same thing. Cytogenetics looks at all of your karyotype to see if there's any abnormalities with that. So here's some types of mutations that you might have read or come across. I'll just take a moment to go over them a little bit, but the mutation is part of the gene mutation is inside that portion of that gene inside that chromosome, and then the rest are on a chromosome level. So some things are switched around, some things are deleted, like deletion monosomy, and then duplicated, and the whole chromosome could just replicate a whole portion or two portions of it. Okay, now I want to talk about CureHub. So CureHub is amazing. It's a portion of HealthTree, if you haven't heard of it yet, where you can connect your medical records, and that comes with a lot of benefits. You will get combined results from different facilities. So if you have multiple facilities you're going to for AML, it'll combine those, have those all in one place. You can track your AML in a more understandable way. We make sure it's more patient-friendly. You're able to participate in research through a lot of ways. We can go over that if you have questions later on after this event. And then you can have personalized help from medical and patient navigators. So like Marilu is a patient navigator, I'm a medical navigator. We have a whole team that's ready to help you with questions. It can be one-on-one. We're just here for you. And then for AML, we are working on personalized treatment options, clinical trial options, twin machines. There's a lot that we're working on. And if you have any questions about what these are, reach out to us. We can explain it later on after this event. It is working for other diseases, and we are currently working on it for AML. So here's kind of a look at what CureHub allows you to look at and do. You see you have sections for labs, genetics, treatments, your imaging results even, and your diagnosis. This is the lab portion of CureHub. This is the genetic portion. And I want to take a few minutes to go over how to connect your medical records. So on CureHub, if you go to the main site of HealthTree for AML, you can type in healthtree.org/AML. It'll take you to a page that looks like this. You see up at the top, it has CureHub. Click on that. It'll take you to this portion. You click on CureHub right here. And that will take you to the main part of CureHub. So you can go to, when you want to connect your medical records, you can either click here or you can click on this icon right here. And that once you click on that, it'll take you here. If you've never set up a connection in CureHub, it'll look like this. It's empty. You just click the add new connection. And then it'll have you type in your facility. So whatever facility you go to for AML, type that in. You can type in multiple and set up multiple connections. And it'll ask you if you have a patient portal. So if you go online and look at your test results, you'll have a patient portal. If you're not able to do that, we will gather your information through paper records, but more than likely you can click yes. It'll take you to your facility's main patient portal sign-in screen. So you just type in your username and password as if you're just logging on to message your doctor or look at some lab results. It will probably ask you some questions before this about like wanting to make sure you want to connect your records to HealthTree. You just answer those questions. Then after that, it's connected. And after that, you don't have to do very much at all. It will automatically pull your labs, pull your doctor's notes, all that stuff. What's related to AML will show up on your CureHub. And you can set up, like I said, multiple connections. They'll all pull information. And then every now and again, if you have a new lab and you want to have that lab show up on CureHub, you click this refresh button or this sync now button, and it'll pull those labs as well, those recent ones. And I just want to let you know, if you do have any questions about any of this process I went over, let us know. You can email us, call us. We can help you set up your connections one-on-one, go slower if you need, or if you have any questions that you want to ask later on about your labs, want to understand your specific labs, then you can let us know, and we're here for you, and we can help you in that aspect. And that is it for me.
That was amazing. Thank you, Elise. I'm gonna give me 1 second here. Okay, that was amazing. That was really informative. I think I've learned a lot. And now I think it's time for the discussion part of today's event. And for that, we also have here Jimena. She's also a medical navigator who is now helping in the education pillar, writing articles and other content with medical background. So if you have any questions about labs or how to track them in HealthTree Cure Hub or anything Elise spoke on today, now is your chance to ask them your questions. This time is specifically set aside for community members to have a chance to talk to our presenters. So please feel free to ask them your questions if you have any. As a reminder, you can ask a question or make a comment by typing in the chat box or by raising your hand if you would like to ask your question verbally. If you raise your hand, once you're called on, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions. And I already see a few one question in the chat, and I do have a few from patients that were unfortunately not able to join the event, but will watch the recording. Okay, let me ask this one. Hime and Elise, feel free to answer. So they ask about what are the most important labs that they should keep track on? You mentioned a lot of them. Is there like specific ones that patients should keep an eye more specifically?
I would say out of the ones that I mentioned, the blast count would be the most important, because the blast count is what tells you if your AML is replicating, if it keeps growing. So if you have a low blast count, that's going to tell you, especially in the bone marrow, that's going to tell you that your AML is kind of under control. If you have a high blast count, it's going to say, oh, we need to get that under control way more.
That's a great question. Hima, do you want to add something or?
Yeah, I think Elise answered it. I would say about a specific test, well, the most specific test would be the bone marrow biopsy. But also a blood sample, I think it's something that a patient can be having regularly in case that they are having a treatment or just beginning with their or just received their AML diagnosis. So I think that considering the complete blood count or a blood test and then the bone marrow biopsy would be the pillars. But especially for this test, the most important is the blast count.
Awesome. Thank you, Jime. There's another question I had here before. And are there specific labs that will help me see if my treatment is working?
Yeah, so the blast as well. That will help you know, like I mentioned, the low blood cells, that's not going to indicate that the AML is worsening because it could be because of chemotherapy. What's really awesome is once you're done with chemotherapy, their doctor is going to want those blood cell counts to increase. That's going to make you healthier, less risk of infection and all of that, those side effects. But to make sure that the treatment is working, the doctors are going to look at your bone marrow blast, so the blast inside your bone marrow. That's the most sensitive. Those tests that are done in the bone marrow are the most sensitive tests and best ways to look at those blasts.
Great, thank you. Also, Jime, I know that you mentioned about bone marrow biopsy, but another patient asked, like, is there any alternative to bone marrow biopsy, or that's like the way to go?
Yeah, well, it is well an alternative, but definitely there's no study that can replace the bone marrow biopsy. I think it's very important to highlight that the bone marrow biopsy is still an important pillar of AML diagnosis because of all the genetic tests and because we are taking the cells that and directly analyzing them. But if there were something that could be similar to analyze the blood cells would be the complete blood count. It would not replace it whatsoever, and I still think that a bone marrow biopsy, although invasive, is important for evaluating the disease and how it's spreading or how it's reducing the AML, well, the blast or AML cells with treatment. So to this date, unfortunately, there's nothing that can replace a bone marrow biopsy, but something that can help monitor the cells without being invasive could be a blood cell count.
Great, great. Yeah, and maybe not on a daily basis, right? Like maybe the CBCs and then periodically the bone marrow biopsy. Great. So I think we have a few questions here in the chat. Okay, so are there other reasons for requesting a lumbar punction? I know that Elise already mentioned a few in the slides, but are there any other reasons?
Not that I know of. So if your doctor does find out that the AML is spreading to your spinal cord, you will probably more than likely get more lumbar punctures done. But in order to test whether or not it's there, I don't think of any other reasons why you would get a lumbar puncture.
Okay, great. And now we have one of subtypes. I know there are many, but are there any specific subtype that is more frequent for patients, specifically maybe in the USA, or is it know that maybe one subtype is more frequent than another one?
Yeah, there's. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go, Human?
Go ahead, please.
There's a lot of different subtypes, and especially mutations that are more common than other mutations. One of them, off the top of my head, is the FLT3 mutation. That is very common in AML, and yeah, so there's a different range of what's common, what's rare. Yeah.
Do you want to add something, Hime, or you're gonna say the same?
Yeah, well, there are mutations of AML, as Elise said, that are most common than others. Under the umbrella of mutations of AML, there are a ton of them, but specific AML subtypes, APL or acute promyelocytic leukemia, it's one of the most common types of subtypes of AML in USA. But it's still, I think, important to say that although AML it's a relatively rare blood cancer and has a smaller community, so building a community such as HealthTree is really important to keep informed and also be a good self-advocate.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
also want to add that if you do have more questions about whether or not your AML subtype is more common or you want more facts about that, more information, that's what HealthTree is for. We educate about AML and the specifics of it, and you can learn at your pace. You can see like you can look at different mutations and what doctors use when they know you have that mutation, what treatments that they normally use for that specific subtype or mutation. And it's very awesome because you can learn at your pace. We have lots of resources for that on HealthTree.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I will make sure that you receive the amazing presentation that Elise just shared, and it includes our support email and phone number. So yeah, thank you. So thank you so much for that extremely amazing presentation for today. I'm gonna go over now for, I don't know, I just want to say thank you. And this is the time we have for the discussion of today. Thank you all again for your questions and your participation in today's event. And just to finish this amazing evening, let me tell you more about our upcoming events. We have a scheduled event planned for June 26th. This event is all for blood cancer communities, in which you will learn more about HealthTree Cure Hub. We were talking about that earlier, and how you can accelerate research. This event will be hosted by our founder and CEO, Jenny Ahlstrom. Later next week, we have also an incredible event hosted by Dr. Sainer about menin inhibitors. We also have some exciting events in the planning process for July. Just as a sneak peek, we will continue hearing from some awesome members of our AML community who are going to come and share their story with us. And there is another one about bone marrow transplant in AML and MDS treatment with Dr. Hira. I'm really excited about these webinars and our amazing speakers, and I would love to see you all at these upcoming events. For more information or to register for the HealthTree events, you can visit the link on the screen, or you can watch out in the upcoming newsletter for the announcements and registration pages for those events. I want to take a quick moment again to thank you and thank HealthTree for AML sponsors who made this event possible. Those sponsors are Servier, Estelis, and Abby. And finally, I just want to say thank you to all of you for helping us build our HealthTree for AML community. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me or Mary if you have any questions about HealthTree, or if you have a topic you would like us to cover in one of our webinars. We would love to make that happen for you. Also, if you would like to share your AML story in one of our webinars, please reach out. We love to highlight the experiences of our community members to help others throughout hearing about peers' experience. I appreciate you all, and I really hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope to see each one of you again. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank